When you were like, yes, good city.
Last time it's the most, it's very, very, okay, it's Emily Dickinson, so her work is pretty, like, she likes these very clear symbolism. So, and we'll talk through everything, because, I will, we'll get on your own, we'll go together.
No, last time you were
So those two will be put in and
at the house and you don't know. And I gotta hit the diamond. I haven't seen one day.
we were able to use it on Friday, but on Friday we took a look at the first part of an assignment that we will finish up later this week. Essentially looking at our opinions on like different statements. So I do have a paper copy, although there is a bit of writing, so if you prefer to type it,
There's no more paper copies.
it is under the assignment called the Row Opinions. Otherwise, it is an online trade or Thursday trade.
There's no more paper copies.
Are there no? I'll get one.
Like your face said no, bro. Like go sit down.
What did my face say to me? Where's that paper at? Where'd you get that?
Well, they were now. She has to bring it.
We should have used some more. Where did the rings? Wait, my face when I did that hurt when I gave up. You have one. Do you have anything?
Good afternoon, Anderson High School. This is your senior external vice president, Jimmy. I have two announcements for you guys today. The first one is that there will be no tutoring this afternoon. Once again, no tutoring this afternoon. My second announcement is that there will be boys wrestling at 2:45 in the wrestling room today. Once again, boys wrestling at 2:45 in the wrestling room. That is all I have for you guys today. Always remember, forever proud, forever strong, forever Indian.
We're going to stay in place for today, especially while Rebecca's out. You can maybe ask her if she gets back. Hello, everyone. So hopefully you all see the instructions out the front. We all need a copy of the poem from the side table and some version of the worksheet. So there is also a paper version at the side table, but there is, if you prefer digital, a version on Canvas under the title Dickinson Poems. And we are beginning work right away on question number 1. So let's look at that. You are going to scan the poem for 2 words you do not know the meaning of. Write down your chosen words and their definitions in the boxes below. If you know all the words already, you can define abash and extremity. So we are just scanning through our 2 poems, looking for any words that you might not immediately recognize, and searching for their definition.
There are extra copies that I just printed out if you need a paper copy of today's work.
Does anybody have any questions about what we are doing?
Yes.
All right. We are going to work on that for 5 minutes, and then we are going to start talking about who Emily Dickinson was and what she wrote. I'm seeing a lot of heads on tables right now, which is not what I want to be seeing. This is our opportunity to work on our definitions, which is going to help us read our poems better in a few minutes. So I would really appreciate if everybody could keep our heads up and work on question number 1.
You should have one of them. If you're doing the questions online, you can just grab the poems.
That's why I asked you. I see if he's got it right. I don't have to go to that. It's Monday.
Let's see. Sean, Aiden, see Destiny. Not Destiny, sorry, other Destiny. I put both my Destinies at the same table. Let's see, I need heads off the table. Right now, you should be able to think through the 2 poems. Just sitting next to and looking for words you are not familiar with. Okay? Aiden, I'm going to do this on paper today. Alright, so paper copy day over on the if you grab them already, better be nice.
I know what it means, but I don't know what it means.
We're going to take 2 more minutes to work on our definition, and then we're going to move on.
Or an extreme degree of mood or emotion.
I did.
Look at me.
Oh, we're just looking at the definition.
Huh? You said text napkins.
Yeah.
So right
And I said I deleted it.
Why did you release that?
That's,
Because I don't
that's
use
working,
it.
that's the definition.
You're a goofball.
I don't use it.
Take it on this.
I use it for like street shots.
Really?
Alright, 1 more minute and then we're moving on.
So it says make a copy of this document. That's the questions. We will make a copy of this. Yeah, it's like I said, it looks like a lot, but we'll go through it. It'll be pretty straightforward. Okay.
Are these 2 different poems?
Oh, really? All right. So if you have not finished your definitions quite yet, that's all right. You can keep working on them as long as you do so silently and still listen to what we're talking about. We are going to read 2 poems by Emily Dickinson today. You have been talking about the Transcendentalist movement and some of the important authors. Emily Dickinson is often considered to be a transcendentalist author. I know you haven't been introduced to her yet, but she is on that pink poster at the back of the classroom. She lived from 1830 to 1886. So for context, she saw the Civil War. So I know you don't know anything really about her yet, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background. A few interesting things about her life. So first of all, she isolated herself in her family home for most of her adult life. If you've heard the word agoraphobic before, that is the fear of going outside. And a lot of historians believe that she was agoraphobic, although we don't know exactly why. She didn't write about it very much. But she did not spend that time twiddling her thumbs. She was a very prolific poet. She would write and write and write poems. But they were all for herself. She never intended for them to be seen. She actually asked for them to be burned after her death. But luckily, most of them weren't, and they were published after she died and became very famous. She was extremely fascinated by the natural world and literature. She writes about those a lot in her poems. It's a little bit ironic, considering she spent so much of her time inside and away from the world, but was so fascinated by the things out around her. She would learn about them through books, and that's how she experienced the world. She was really well known in her writing style for her distinct and witty first-person narration and her unusual symbolism. You'll see a little bit of the first-person narration in one of the poems today, but we are going to put a lot of focus on the unusual symbolism. Who here has heard the term metaphor before, by raise of hands? All right, a few of you. That's good to hear. Would anybody be willing to describe what a metaphor is? Yes?
A metaphor is one thing to another without using metaphor at all.
Exactly.
So this is like this and this and that.
Right. So a metaphor is a type of figure of speech, or it's a type of figurative language that compares two things to each other without using the words like or as. So if you use like or as, that's a simile. If you just say that one thing is another, that is a metaphor. And authors use metaphors to help the reader better understand complex ideas about something. So in the case of Emily Dickinson, she's going to compare elements of nature, things from the natural world that you can see, that you can touch, that you can hear, to parts of life, things that you cannot see or touch or hear, but still affect you. And she is going to help us better understand those parts of life by comparing them to the things that we can observe. All right. So it's also important for us to understand how she fits into the transcendentalist movement. That's why we're talking about her at all. So you have talked a lot about these 5 major beliefs of the transcendentalists. They are non-conformity, self-reliance, free thought, idealism, and the importance and spirituality of nature. So Dickinson most fits into 2 of these categories: non-conformity and the spirituality and importance of nature. Who can tell me what non-conformity is? I know that you've talked a lot about what non-conformity is. Can anybody give me a definition? nonconformity is the opposite of conformity. So if you conform, you try to be the same as everyone else. Therefore, nonconformity means you try to be unique. You don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Now, the way we see that appear in Emily Dickinson's life and writing is, as I mentioned before, she spent her entire life, or her entire adult life, isolated in her house. This was during the mid-1800s, and there was a very narrow set of expectations for what a woman would do. You would become a wife, you would have children, and you would do housework. Emily Dickinson did not really do any of those things. She was a writer. She spent all of her time writing poetry, and that was extremely unusual for the time. She did not conform to that idea of woman. She also developed her own unique writing style, which did not always adhere to traditional rhyme structures or punctuation. You'll see some unusual capitalization in her poems. And she came up with her own symbols instead of relying on what was expected. She also connects to the importance of spirituality of nature. As we're going to see, she would use extended metaphors about the natural world to make the complex parts of life more approachable. In other words, she is using nature to better understand herself, much like Emerson did, although in a different way. All right, let's look at our first poem, Fame is a Bee, together. So everybody should have a paper copy, but obviously it is also up on the board. We are going to do something called choral reading. So if you think about that word choral, it's a lot like choir. We are all going to be reading this out loud together at the same time. I'm going to let you know when to start by the count of 3. Everyone should read together. All right, does anybody have any questions about that? All right, so looking at either your paper copy or on the board, 1, 2, 3. Fame is a bee. It has a song, it has a sting. On 2, it has a wing. All right, great job. I would say out of the periods, you guys have done the best job so far at everybody participating, so I'm very proud of you. We're going to read through that one more time, and then we're going to talk about it. 1, 2, 3. Fame is a bee. It has a song, it has a sting. On 2, it has a wing. All right. So we look at our question number 2 on the worksheet. The first question we want to answer is, what is Emily Dickinson comparing in this poem? So we think back to metaphors. Fame is a bee is a metaphor. Fame is a bee. Those two things are equal. And as she goes through this poem, she is going to be explaining her perspective on what fame is, what its characteristics are, by comparing it to a bee, something that we all have personal experience with. So, looking at question number 2, she's comparing fame and a bee. All right. She names 3 shared characteristics between fame and a bee in this poem. Who can name me one of those shared characteristics? Yeah. fame, it has a song. So both a bee and fame have a song. What would be the song of a bee? Its characteristic sound. When you think of a sound that a bee makes, right? Bees go boo. So when you hear that sound, you know that a bee is around, right? But fame also has a song. It's a little bit different. What do we think might be the song of fame? Has anybody ever heard of a siren before? Like the mythological creature, not the wee-oo. A siren? Yeah. Can anybody describe what a siren is? What's that? All right. Okay, but what do they all do? Right. So a siren sings to lure people in. And in a really similar way, fame has an alluring song that draws people in. What are some of the alluring parts about fame? Why would somebody want to be famous? Money. If you're famous, you're probably going to have a lot of money. What else?
For attention.
Attention. If you're famous, you're going to have a lot of attention. And some people really like that. Yeah? Oh, yeah, she'll help you with that. All right. So we see that there are certain things about fame that are appealing. It's song that lets you know fame is around. What is the next thing that, what is the next way that Dickinson compares a bee to fame? It has what? A sting, exactly. So we've talked about the appeal of fame. But now we're going to talk about maybe from its negative side. What would be the sting of a bee? This one's kind of self-explanatory. Right. So the sting of a bee is quite literally a bee will sting you. Right? If you are near a bee, you're going to hear it buzzing. But you're also at risk of it stinging you, of it hurting you. In the same way, if you're around fame, you're going to hear its song, but you're going to be also at risk of it stinging you. What could be the sting of fame? How could fame sting someone? Can anyone think of a negative aspect of fame? Right. If you're famous, a lot of people are probably going to hate you. And that's going to hurt. Another drawback of fame is some people like attention. Some people really don't. So that could potentially be a drawback. So we saw there are positive aspects of fame. There are negative aspects of fame. But onto it has a wing. This is where the metaphor is really important. Because if I just said fame has a wing, that wouldn't make much sense on its own. But if we think about it, using the metaphor of the bee, bees have wings, right? What does a bee use its wings for? To fly. So a bee will use its wings to fly away. And in a similar way, fame is temporary. It'll fly away too. So if we look at this poem as a whole, fame is a bee. It has a song. It has positive things connected to it. It has a sting. It has negative things connected to it. It has a wing. It is temporary. So let's look at question number 3. Based on the poem, does Dickinson believe that fame is good, bad, or a combination of the two? And make sure to explain your reasoning. That's really important. And this should be at least 2 complete sentences. What does Dickinson believe about fame? And how do you know? We're going to take a few minutes on that.
I can hear my voice breaking.
Do you have chance to go over? Alright, we're going to take one more minute on questions 2 and 3, and then we're going to look at our next poem. Alright, wrap up question number 3. And we are going to do another choral reading of this poem. So, looking at either your paper copy or the front screen, we are all going to read this together on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, and sings the tune without the words, and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm, that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land, and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. Alright, we're going to read through that one more time, and if we could have some more voices, I would really appreciate it. Alright, on the count of 3, we are going to read through Hope is the Thing with Feathers one more time. 1, 2, 3. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, and sings the tune without the words, and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm, that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land, and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. I heard so many more voices that second time, and I am very happy. Thank you for that. Alright, so we are looking again for a metaphor. We are trying to figure out what Dickinson is comparing in this poem. So we start out with the line, hope is the thing with feathers. We have that word is. Hope is something. What has feathers? A bird. So she's really saying hope is a bird. That is what she's comparing in this poem. Hope is a bird. And as we look through the poem, we are going to watch for what the bird is doing. And that will help us understand what she believes about hope. So So let's look at the first stanza. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Who can identify one thing that the bird is doing in this stanza? It's singing, right? So singing is something that birds normally do, right? Especially in the morning, you'll wake up and you'll hear birds singing, and it's lovely, and everybody likes it. Hope is also singing. So let's think about what the song of hope might be. Maybe it tells us that you can keep going. Maybe it tells us things will get better. Hope is sending you a message. And it is perched in the soul. It is inside of you. Does this song ever stop? Based on the first stanza, does this song ever stop? No, we have that line, and never stops at all. So we have our little bird singing continuously. Hope is singing inside you continuously. Let's look at the next stanza. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. All right, we have a little bit more complicated vocabulary here, but that's why we did the definition activity. Who, by raise of hands, looked up the word gale? All right. Would anybody be willing to read the definition that they found for gale? Yes. So a gale is a very strong wind. So the bird is in the middle of a strong wind, and it is trying to abash the little bird. By raise of hands, who looked up the word abash? All right, I saw one hand. Anybody else look up the word abash? All right. Would anybody be willing to read the definition for abash?
Makes someone feel embarrassed, disconcerted, or amish.
So, to abash someone or something is to try to embarrass it or make it ashamed. So, the gale, the strong wind, the storm, is trying to embarrass or shame the bird that kept so many warm. If we think about comparing a bird to a giant storm, which is larger? The storm is so much larger than a little songbird, right? So it really seems unfair. And it almost seems hopeless. But the bird carries on nonetheless. So the storm is trying to stop the bird. It's trying to shame it, embarrass it. But the bird continues on. And what does it do by continuing on? It keeps so many warm. Who can think of a time when they had something really difficult going on in their life? Everything seemed miserable. And then you had that little bit of hope. Can you think of that feeling? That is what Dickinson is saying hope is bringing. It is bringing you that sense of relief and warmth in the middle of your struggle. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked to come of me. So far we've seen this bird in the middle of a storm. Now it's somewhere cold, and now it's in a strange sea. So a big open ocean. It's following the narrator through all of these difficult places. And what does it ask for in return? Did anybody look up that word extremity?
No.
By raise of hands? Would you be willing to read the definition?
An extreme desire, need, or emotions.
Can you read that a little bit louder?
An extreme desire, of need, or emotions.
Okay.
Well, that was only part of the
Yeah.
thing. My fault.
That's all right. There are a couple different definitions of extremity, but they are kind of similar in their core message. So you found a definition of extremity that talks about extreme desire. Extremity can also be a term used for your fingers and toes, the very edges of your body. Another definition for extremity is the very outer limits of something, and that's what she's using it for. So never, even at the very outer limits, the bird asks for anything in return. So what does that say about hope? We see the bird is following the narrator around everywhere and never offering this warmth, but never asking for anything in return. So think about what that could represent with hope. And we are going to answer questions 4 and 5. What is Dickinson comparing in this poem? And how does Dickinson's use of metaphor in this poem help the reader to understand the nature of hope? And try to be specific when you give your answer. Number 5 needs to be at least 2 complete sentences. So number 4, what is Dickinson comparing? Number 5, how does that comparison, that metaphor, help the reader to understand what hope is? Does anybody have any questions about what you need for 4 and 5? All right, we're going to spend a few minutes on that, and then we're going to talk about our activity. I know that this poem is a little bit more complicated than the last one, so if you have any confusion about it, feel free to raise your hand, and then Beck or I will gladly come over to Hilda.
Yes. Most times you will have to defend your honor. We all have to defend.
Thanks for grabbing that, Jaden.
Oh, so we could have like. What's that? I didn't see the like the bright
We're going to spend 1 more minute just on 4 and 5, and then I'm going to introduce the activity for people who are ready for the next step.
Let's take a look at question number 5. So it asks, how does Dickinson's use of metaphor in this poem, her comparison between a bird and the concept of hope, help us to understand the nature of hope? Be specific, okay? So as she's describing this bird, right, she talks about the fact that it's singing a song and it never stops singing, right? Even though there's a big storm, a lot of rain, it keeps on going. And it says that kept so many warm. So we have this idea of hope, and this bird is singing this song that's helping to maybe encourage people over time. right? And the last stanza says, I've heard it to chill the slant, so even in a place that's very cold, right? We still hear this song of hope, or maybe this bird song. So how does this comparison between a bird and this idea of hope? How does that help us to understand
Yeah.
the
Alright.
feeling of
I've
hope?
seen a lot of people on phones and such, so I'm going to assume that we're ready for our activity, which is question number 6. So if I would have all eyes up here and voices down,
Right, helps us to kind of see open.
for number 6, you are going to write a poem that describes a part of life by comparing it to something from nature. So you're going to be essentially creating an extended metaphor like Dickinson did. You may pick from the elements in the table or come up with your own. If you look on the worksheet, there are lots of examples of parts of life and parts of nature. Those are for if you're having trouble coming up with your own ideas. You can come up with your own ideas or pick from the table. Both are perfectly fine. Your poem can rhyme, but it doesn't have to.
All right. I'm hearing a lot of conversations right now, and I personally am having trouble keeping track of what Misty Young is saying. So I know that most of you are answering questions about this, but if I could have voices off for just another minute so she can finish explaining this, I think that will help everyone to know exactly what's going on. So just pause your question for 1 second, and then you can continue your conversation in just a minute. Okay? Thank you.
So in case anybody missed anything, you are going to be writing a poem that describes a part of life by comparing it to something from nature. So in other words, like Dickinson, you're going to be making an extended metaphor. You may pick from the elements in the table or come up with your own. Both are perfectly fine. The poem can rhyme, but it doesn't have to. If you are up to a rhyme, great. If not, she wrote a lot of free verse. And the poem should be between 6 and 12 lines long. So I know none of you are professional writers. I'm not expecting this to be a masterpiece or anything or award-winning. What I'm mostly looking for is the comparison between the part of nature and the part of life, where you explain the part of life by using the part of the natural world, and for it to be between 6 and 12 lines long. If you're having trouble coming up with what you want to write about or how you want to explain it, there are some bullet-pointed questions that can help you start thinking. Does anybody have any questions about what is expected for the poem? All right. So if you haven't finished the questions 1 through 5 yet, you can keep working on that. If not, you can start working on the poem activity. You will have a few minutes tomorrow to finish it, but you want to get the bulk of it done today. This will be when you have the most time to work on it.
So again, our first poem was 4 lines, our second poem was 12 lines. So the maximum poem size you're going to do is the second poem, right? Where it's like 3 stanzas max, right? You can use short lines or long lines, whatever works best for you. But you're going to compare something out of those first 2 columns with something out of those second 2 columns, or something that you can come up with from your own brain. Okay? Again, if you've got questions.
Oh, and when you pick out your part of nature and your part of life, make sure to write them down on the blanks underneath the table, just so that it's really clear to me what the metaphor is.
If you are not sure how to start your poem, think about the way that each of our different poems starts. They start in a very similar way. They say, like, hope, what is the first one? Fame is a bee, right? So you can do the same thing, right? With your concept first, and say it is something else. And then think about the traits that one of them has that help to connect it or make it similar to or maybe different from the other object or idea that you have. Okay? You're welcome to use our example poems as a model for yours. We still got 6 minutes left, so we've got a lot of time to get your main idea onto your paper. Okay, I am seeing a lot of phones out. Phones should be put away. You should be working on finishing up your question number 6. Okay. Got a little bit less than 5 minutes left.
So even though you'll have some time tomorrow, this is when you're going to have the most time to work on your phone.
Teachers, please excuse this interruption. But this is a short announcement about today's faculty meeting. Please bring your device, whether it's a Chromebook or other device. You will need that. We have a lot to cover today in the faculty meeting, so plan on starting promptly at 2:45 and ending at 3:30. Thank you.
So we have a few minutes left, just so that you know what to do when the bell rings. If you have not,
Voices up, please, for just a second. Thank you very much.
so we still have a few minutes left, so if you are not finished yet, you should keep working. But just so that we all know what to do, if you are complete, if you have completed everything on the worksheet, so questions 1 through 5 and activity number 6, you can turn it into the 7th period tray. If you have not completed everything, you may also turn it into the 7th period tray so that you can find it tomorrow. If you bring it home with you, you are taking responsibility for having it tomorrow because it will be due.
If you borrowed a charger or a Chromebook, make sure that gets brought back up to the counter. If you borrowed a pencil or had a copy of our poems on paper, make sure those get back up to the counter so that we can bring them back tomorrow. But we have just about a minute left. Make sure yours is included and everything.
No, I know. Wait.
Everyone have a good day.
Oh, yes, I know. He